This is Dead Stick Radio, episode 12, recorded live on May 18th, 2020, Building the Perfect Panel. All right, and we are live here. So today we got ourselves, obviously, Scott as usual, and today we're joined by Tom Watkins.
So Tom here. We were talking about avionics a while ago, a little bit, about what the right thing to do was, go with the old versus new, that kind of thing. What's cheaper? What makes the most sense? And I saw a comment on a Facebook group from Mr. Watkins here that referred to some of these radios as used toilet paper. I thought, man, he'll be a perfect guest for this one. So that might be a good lead in here. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, I think it's a great lead in. Obviously, we've all just recently done a bunch of panel upgrades ourselves. So, let's talk about panels.
Brian, do you have a Buccaneer shirt?
I do. This is I've got 3 of them. One of them didn't fit right, but I ordered these things online. I got one's a really nice. One's got the whole blueprints of the whole Buccaneer on it. So, kind of cool shirts.
Tom, he bought a Buccaneer last fall? And he replaced the whole right side of the panel with a new, what'd you put in it?
So I had, it was just a bunch of steam gauges. Yeah, ridiculously old steam gauges. There was an old engine monitor, but it had fried, and all it did was, get the temperatures. It didn't get any kind of logging, none of the digital tach, none of the kind of cool stuff you'd expect on a modern engine monitor. And I decided I wanted something better. I wanted a proper engine monitor. I wanted something that would alert me if I'm screwing up the engine in any way, shape, or form. And I wanted something where I could really get it all the way back, lean a peak way back and be able to monitor absolutely everything of that engine. So we completely ripped out the right-hand side of the panel. Actually, we put an overlay over top of it and put in a JPI EDM 900. And that's pretty much been the entirety of my right-hand panel. The only thing that stayed over on the right-hand side was my hydraulic gauge.
It was pretty sweet. Tom, have you ever seen breaker switches?
I have, actually, and just oddly enough that you bring that up, Matt, who's hopefully joining us shortly, he has a breaker switch installed in his Long Easy that controls the electronic ignition, and I didn't know this, but apparently they're kind of cruddy, and his breaker switch broke after only a couple of hours in service. He bought it brand new from Aircraft Bruce, and it failed. So yes, I have seen them. I haven't really thought much about them, but after seeing Matt's fail, I'm not really a fan.
Because I think they're standard in Buccaneers, aren't they, Brian?
Yeah, exactly. Every Buccaneer, obviously the planes are built in 70s, early 70s. So all of them across the bottom of the panel, all your switches are just breakers. So you just pull out the breaker and push it back in. Now, in defense of that, that's actually how the space shuttle operated for its entire lifetime. To save weight, they didn't include a switch and a breaker. They just included nothing but straight breakers.
So Brian, are yours switches or are they just the pullable breakers?
Yeah, just pullable breakers. Just pull them in and out, and that's how you turn on lights and stuff.
So there's actually a difference. So there's a switch. They're not real common. Oftentimes they're used as a switch for an avionics bus or something, but it's a switch, and actually on the end of the toggle has the current rating done. So I think what you've got are just resettable breakers. I've got those in my Lancer, and they're great, but I don't know if I have one. I could show you guys one, but they're a little different.
Well, Brian's are standard in his Buccaneer. It's like a breaker that is the switch.
Yeah, so there's
turn his master on off. He pulls the breaker
out. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Simple.
Yep. Yeah. Works fairly well for me, so I'm happy.
I've never seen it.
So, what other mods are you going to do to the panel, Brian?
The other mod I did to the panel is, the clock was out on it. It was just an old little battery powered clock, just a terrible piece of crap. So all I did is just replace that whole clock assembly with a different one, which is a new clock assembly. It has 2 USB ports on it, and I plug in USB onto those, and it works great. Oh, my old one was newer than that. So that was it might have been your quartz clock.
No, I got this actually. Matt was doing the panel in his Long Easy, so this came out of it. Actually, no, this might have come out of the cassette. I can't remember. But it's kind of a neat thing.
That was in Atomic Pumpkin?
Yeah, I think so. 8-day wind up. It's actually a Swiss watch.
Oh, very nice.
It looks like the clocks they have at swimming pools.
Yeah, where they got the 4 hands going, so you can always start within 15-second intervals. Yeah. The other thing I did to the panel is instead of replacing all the avionics and all the radios and everything so I can get GPS, I just put a RAM mount on there, just a standard off the shelf RAM mount to attach my little iPad mini, and it sits there right on the dash. I put in a second USB charging port for it. So now that's my whole panel. It's just an iPad and an EDM 900, and everything on the right hand side is simple and very efficient.
I think the iPad thing, Brian, is one of the smartest things that people can do. I hear oftentimes people are upgrading, airplanes. I'll call it a VFR airplane, like your Buccaneer, with $30,000 to $40,000 worth of certified instruments. And why? Are you ever going to fly your Buccaneer on a weather day where you're having to fly an approach down to 300 feet? Probably not. So for the money and the practicality, buying an iPad, it's just huge. The one thing actually it's sitting in my backpack right here, I'm a huge proponent of is this little doodad here. So I've actually got 2. I've got this doodad. I don't know if anybody knows what that is that's watching.
Stratus. I have one in the other room, yeah. And I also have another one. I've got the Stratix. Let me go find my Stratix. It's right here too.
This is the Stratus 2S.
That's like an AHRS, isn't it?
Hey,
like with ForeFlight?
There's a.
Yeah, that's it's a full AHRS for ForeFlight. So I have a Stratus 2, just like Tom has, which is the one I primarily use. Then I also have this little bad boy over here. I don't know if you can see it. This is this is called the Stratix, and this one is significantly cheaper than the Stratus. And it's a little mini computer. It's what's called a Raspberry Pi, and it just sits inside this case with a couple software defined radios, and it works really, really well. And it also means I can write my own software for this thing. So some people use these. So if you've ever been on like Flight Radar, then they're watching ADS-B signals. A lot of times they're actually using one of these things, and they just connect in it's actually inside it. There's a network port inside of there that you can plug into, and they just connect that to the internet, and then suddenly they're able to watch any kind of ADS-B traffic. So these are really handy little devices. They're really, really cheap. The big problem is these are they're fiddly to get going and fiddly to make work, and they have no battery in them, so you have to have an external battery. But they do work really well.
So Tom's is the same, isn't it?
Well, the Stratus is an internal battery, but the one thing I like about it, I don't know if you guys can see there.
Yeah.
The Horizon, it's flawless. I mean, it just works. You turn it on and it works. Is it certified? No, but I can tell you, I'd much rather be flying IMC with modern, electronics than some 45-year-old instrument that's just garbage.
Vacuum gate.
Exactly. And when I was
even for a Stratus 2, that's an iPad 4 Mini. One thing to note too, if you're going to buy an iPad, make sure you buy one that has 3G functionality, because the Wi-Fi only iPads don't have a GPS built in. But buy a 3G one, buy a Stratus. About $2,000, I think, for the pair, and it is just phenomenal. You've got everything at your fingertips. You can save all of your data. So there's a function in ForeFlight. Well, there's an additional expense with ForeFlight, but let's say I'm going to do a trip from here to Toronto. I can do a pack, and all the charts, all of the NOTAMs, all of the information that I need is all uploaded onto my iPad, saved. All the maps are saved. I've got the entire North American VFR map system saved on my iPad. I mean, it's just crazy to think about how many paper maps you would need. Like, you need a suitcase or a duffel bag full of paper maps. It's just crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And the best thing I like about my Stratus, I was flying back from Ontario, and there was I was flying along, and I had the Stratus connected just to see what other traffic was out there, playing around with the AHRS part of it. And suddenly a little blip appears on my ForeFlight, and it's right ahead of me, and it's coming straight towards me, but it's 2,000 feet below me, 3,000 feet below me, something like that. And I'm like, well, what is this? So I haven't heard any radio calls, so I make a outbound radio call, and nobody responds. And I realized they're probably taking off from that airport over there. So I I quickly tap on the radio signal on ForeFlight, just figure out what radio it is, quickly swap over my radio signal and just key the mic. And sure enough, it's a medevac coming out of there and they're coming straight at me. And if I didn't have that ADSB, they might not have seen me. I might not have seen them. I actually veered out of the way, maybe about a mile, and I looked over and I saw, and they would have, and we were basically at the same altitude at the same place, going exactly in opposite directions. And we would have had a conflict there pretty easily. So it just, to me, having ADSB is amazing, even though I don't have it out. So
it's a huge benefit to safety. I mean, to your point there, a couple of years ago, Mark, another pilot friend of mine, we were flying down to Reno. We were about 100 miles north of Boise, 14,000 feet. The weather was, I mean, it was obscured visibility and smoke, probably down to about 2 miles visibility. We probably should have just filed IFR, but anyway, long story short, we saw opposite direction traffic coming towards us on the Stratus about 2 minutes before ATC called us up and said, hey, there's some traffic. He was 2,000 feet below us, but still, I mean, it's pretty cool to be able to see that sort of thing well in advance of even an ATC heads up that, hey, there's some traffic there. Total boost of safety.
Absolutely, yeah. We were starting to install those in gliders back when I was flying gliders, and they weren't ADSB transceivers. They're called power flarms, which do kind of the same thing. They do receive ADSB, and they easily would have been easily saving people's lives. There's been so many times where you've been out flying around in a glider, and it'll ping at you and say there's someone over here, and you're like, I didn't see them. It's told me exactly where they are. And the nice thing about power flarm for gliders is obviously gliders we get in close proximity a lot, so it's able to understand where the gliders are going. So it's not constantly freaking out at you and saying, you're getting close to them when you're both just thermaling. Yeah. So great piece of equipment. I love this stuff.
Is the Stratus ADSB out or just in?
Just in.
Just in, yeah.
Just in, yeah. So speaking of upgrades, I think I should talk a little bit. So avionics was pleasant enough to help us out with some of their new technology. So they have a new transponder called a Tail Beacon X. It's an ADSB out. I forget what the version for Canada is, but it's the satellite-based version. So ADSB out and a Mode S transponder.
Is it Diversity? Is it called with the two antennas?
Yeah. So maybe that's what it's called. I can't remember, but
yeah, they connect with the Iridium satellites. I can't remember the actual name of the Iridium. They're like ACOM or something.
So anyway, avionics has been trying to get this certified, so they've asked for some people to help them out with some of their testing. I've got one. I've tried it a few times, but it's incredible how small it is. So essentially, it fits in your tail light, similar to the tail beacon that they're already selling as an ADSB out option in the US. But this is an entire standalone transponder. So the tail beacon and the wing beacon that they're selling in the US, you still need your regular Mode C or Mode S transponder on board the airplane. And what the tail beacon or the wing beacon does is it sniffs it sees the output of your transponder on 1080 megahertz and then couples your output with your altitude to the GPS signal, and ADSB transmits it out. You still need your old transponder. The system that they've given us, it's a complete standalone unit. It probably weighs less than a pound, I think, the entire thing. Simple installation, 3 wires, but it's crazy. So far, I've done about 6 flights with it, I think, or maybe, I guess after yesterday, probably 2 more flights, 8 flights. It's working good. It's just crazy to see the new technology. It's a step ahead. There's none of this old crap that it's got a wire harness of 18 wires that are an inch thick. Modern stuff, all digital, just excellent.
I am so excited about that Tail Beacon X. That avionics is doing some amazing things, and those things are incredibly cheap compared to the stuff from Garmin. Like for a Garmin unit to do ADSB out, diversity out, you're looking $7,000-8,000 US. Whereas a Tail Beacon X, a avionics Tail Beacon X, they said is something like $2,500. So way cheaper.
I think it's a little more than that. I saw it on Spruce. So this is the first one they sent us. They sent us an updated one. So this is the entire transponder. This is it. That's the control head. That's it. Nothing else.
And does that do your mode C and your mode S, or just mode S?
I think it's just a mode S output, but essentially it's your standalone transponder. You don't need anything else. You program it all through Wi-Fi. You turn it on and you log on with your phone or There's an app actually they use to set up your aircraft parameters in it. It works great. I mean, they've had a bit of development issues, but that's the standard development practice. They're trying to get it to market quickly, and what they've got now works great. I mean, it's light, it's cheap. Even at $5,600, I think is what they're retailing for on Spruce now. It's still cheap. I mean, 10 years ago to buy a new Garmin transponder was like $5,000, just the tray. And again, to wire it, it's a huge undertaking. You've got coax, you've got all this crap. This has got none of that. Plug it in the tail, that's it.
Wow, yeah, it's amazing. They're only available for experimental though right now, aren't they? Or can you get them for certified?
So right now they're still just for experimental aircraft. They're trying to get them certified, and what they do actually. Do you want to grab that thing here?
But those diversities aren't even available yet, I don't think, to buy. Aren't they just like beta testing?
We're in the beta testing. I haven't talked to Trent in a while, but they give us this little doodad too. So this is a Sentry that's been repurposed to be a data logger. So what's happening now, when I go fly, the satellites are recording the transponder, and this is also recording the ADS-B output live. And to help with the certification, from what I understand, they're taking the recorded data from here and comparing it to the satellite data to make sure they match. And if they match, I guess they need some number of hours of flight testing or miles or something to say they're good, and then the certification will go forward. But I think they're trying to get it certified this year. So that'll be the one that'll be on the radar to a lot of people, I think.
Absolutely, yeah.
Super simple install, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I was looking at doing some further upgrades to the panel, particularly because I wanted to go to the States this year. Obviously, pandemic has kind of squashed that, but I was looking at going to the States, and to really fly around properly in the States, you need ADS-B, and I'm not going to waste money on a regular ADS-B unit when we're going to have diversity here, at least in the higher altitudes in Canada here very shortly. So I'm waiting for that tail beacon to come available for my plane, and then I'll be the first in line to buy one.
Tom, do you have to run wiring, like data wiring back there?
There's one serial pair, so 2 circuits and power. So if you were going to install it, like let's say Brian's going to put it in the Buccaneer, I don't know where your tail light is. If it's up on the top of the rudder, I'm guessing. Yeah. You use the power wire for the light to power it, and then you need to run a shielded twisted pair to feed data. For data. Yeah, it's not a big deal though. Compared to what a regular transponder install is, I mean, I'd much rather run a 24 gauge twisted pair than 30 feet at RG400, or if you're using RG58 still, plus all the encoder wiring. All the encoders still parallel gray code.
All that comes out. The antenna comes out. The big box.
I've left mine in my Lancer. I haven't completely tore out the old stuff. I just want to make sure all this is good and working before I do that. But once that happens, then that stuff's coming out, because it's just dead weight you're hauling around.
Yeah. Does it make sense running old radios like that? Because they come for sale quite often.
I mean, the comment that you mentioned earlier about my post on Facebook saying, those radios are like buying used toilet paper. It's 100% true. So could you imagine going to a garage sale and buying a cordless telephone from 1985? With the old antenna that was telescopic. That's essentially what you're buying. It's old crap. I mean, back in 1980, or a lot of the radios were developed in the 70s. Yeah, they were cool at the time, but these aren't the 1970s anymore. And the amount of money and effort you're going to spend on an install of something like that versus what a new radio costs. I think a new ICOM A200 is about $1,200 or $1,400. It's going to work, and it's not going to come out of tune. It's not going to need adjustments. It's not going to need maintenance. It's going to work when it's hot. It's going to work when it's cold. It's not going to use 80 amps because something fried in it and caught on fire. Those exact radios, a buddy of ours, Chris Weaver, he had a report of one caught on fire and got thrown out the window. I mean, these are the things that happen. They're older technology, right? They're 1970s electronics. You look inside, even some of the later King transponders, the Fenix King KT76A transponders, the later model ones, the circuit board looks empty because they've, taken all of this old school technology and replaced it all with a couple of microcontrollers. It's just crazy to see the development changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Before you used to have big discrete components, transistors. You'd have vacuum tubes if you go real far back, and now it's all just replaced with these little microchips that software defined radios and some of the later stuff. Like that's running this thing is a software defined radio. These things work so much easier. They're so much cheaper, and they're way more reliable.
That's the entire control head.
Oh, hey, Matt.
Coders.
Sorry for just butting in, guys. I'm still out at the airport. Blair's going for a ride in a fast plane, I guess. And I had an opportunity to go up in the AN2, so I decided to jump in and go for a fly.
Well, that's why you ditched us.
Yeah, I had a good reason.
Yeah. What's Blair in? Is that a Legacy?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's that Innovative Wings airplane?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We're talking avionics right now.
Okay. I'll listen in and catch up.
I'll see if I can get your video stream here running, but yeah.
I guess the topic of the avionics came from my post on Facebook that basically said installing, 30-year-old Collins radios is like buying used toilet paper. Why don't you talk about what you've done to the Long Easy in terms of avionics and wiring?
Oh yeah. I got a plane that was built in the I guess early 80s. And it had steam gauges and all kinds of gauges tucked away in the armpits and everywhere. So for just better cockpit management, I have just recently swapped it over to kind of a bit of a glass cockpit and a carbon fiber panel. So, but you have all of your main instruments right up front. Everything, all the information you need to know, easy access, and all displayed at the same time. Which to me was a big thing for a plane that is experimental, and I was initially test flying. I wanted to data log the engine information and just have as much information as I can right in front.
Right. So the theme there is go modern.
Yeah, and it's experimental, so there is it's cheaper and easier to put in or upgrade your avionics with that than with a certified plane, because what I did would have probably cost me $20,000 in a certified plane. So, I may have spent $5,000. So there is a kind of a benefit to the experimental world if you're handy enough to do the work.
Yeah, I had a quote
I put
to do
one of those GTR. What's that, Brian?
Oh, I had a quote to do the panel in mine. It was going to be a relatively simple panel. It wasn't this massive integrated Garmin thing. And the quote came back at $30,000. I'm like, there's no way I'm doing that. What are you guys on crack? Like my iPad does 90% of what I want that other thing to do, but my iPad cost me like $800, including the mount. Like, okay, cool.
What was in that quote though, Brian? Because wasn't a lot of that labor too?
No, only 5,000 that was labor. Almost all the rest of it was so like $25,000 worth of it was just the electronics. So I had because I don't have an intercom in my plane, so I've got this little intercom box. Get rid of that. I was doing a Garmin Navcom, just a standard Navcom radio. I was doing a GTN, there's like a 355 or something, which is just the navigator, just the GPS navigator, and then I was doing a couple of was the dude 275. So that's is most of the 275 that end up causing the big advanced cost there, and I'm just like I don't need all that stuff. So I'm looking back and figuring out what I need, because I do want to make my plane so it's ready for IFR. So if I do take it around the world, which I'm planning on doing, then if I get into trouble, I have all the equipment I need. But generally speaking, I am perfectly happy with it just being a VFR airplane.
Yeah, I put one of those GTR 200Bs in the kit box. It's experimental only. It's my most favorite piece of avionics, and it's like $1,200.
Yep.
It's got like music, auto tune, no more tune at all, or no more squelch at all. It ties into my Era GPS, so I just tune whatever airport I'm going to and press the frequency, and it populates it into my standby on the radio. It's pretty awesome.
Oh, really?
Oh man, it's amazing. And the quality is so good.
The AN2 has a full Garmin suite. in it. So there's obviously some of the old engine gauges, but then there's new glass cockpit of Garmin on both sides. So it's pretty interesting because the Russian gauges are pretty hard to read, like what exactly it's indicating. You can tell by the range of numbers probably what it's for, but some of the other stuff is you have a needle pointing at something in Russian writing and it's not quite sure.
Wait, you can't just replace. You can't just replace those with new. Like, is this some weird plug?
It's all metric for one thing. Yeah, and it's so like when we were flying tonight, it was in kilometers per hour. He has the Garmin in kilometers per hour, which is
because the manual's like that.
Yeah, but yeah.
Man, that thing's got oodles of panel space, I bet, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's got a lot of the original gauges plus the Garmin, and there's still room.
What'd you do to the pumpkin again?
I just put a carbon fiber panel in it, that's all. I just redid all the wiring and then a panel, but nothing really updated. There's not really any gauges to do in that.
Didn't you say you found like automotive wiring in that thing, like solid core copper?
Yeah. Like household wiring.
The coolest find of any wire that we found lately was the push to talk switch in the Long Easy.
Yeah, it was a phone cord. Like, like an old rotary phone that you like, how it has like the coiled cord. It was like that. And I know it was from a rotary phone because if the plane was built in the 80s.
Okay, so for non-technical people listening, so solid core copper, which is what you'd power your lights in your house with, is a big no-no in airplanes because it's very prone to failure. Is that right?
Vibration. It doesn't have to deal with vibration in a house. So all the stuff that we use in automotive and air aviation is all like fine strand wire. So It's got lots of flexures, so it doesn't. So
if it cracks, you don't go open.
Yeah, we do the same. We do the same thing in networking as well. In walls where things aren't ever going to move, you put in the solid core because it's cheaper and it's got a lot of other benefits. But then anywhere where you're moving the cables around, you put in that stranded core, so it's not fatiguing.
Yeah.
Well, and that aircraft spec wire, that white stuff, also has that really nice outside layer on it. Yeah. It's like abrasion proof.
Yeah, it's rated for probably higher temperatures and abrasion proof. So that's what it is now. Most of the wiring in the longies now, I would say like 95% is all Tefzel from aircraft spruce.
Yeah.
You've got some Kapton in there still, but I mean, for the most part, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
What's Kapton?
Yeah, some Kapton wire inside the airplane still.
What is that?
That's them climbing out.
I
don't know if you can see them. I don't know where they are on my screen, but they're like at 1,000 feet already, not even at the end of the runway.
Jeez. My Kit Fox can do that.
Yeah. I think
but
the
not
Legacy,
really.
Was that
twice the time?
I think the Legacy has a little bit more power. It's a 350 horse twin turbo Lycoming.
I can still climb that steep. I've done it before. Just at 50 knots.
The AN2, actually, I was really surprised. Like 2 runway lights and you're off the ground, and the thing is just climbing. The controls are extremely heavy.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, that's what I expected.
Like
were you sitting in the cockpit?
What's that?
Were you in the cockpit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you go to roll it, like in a turn, you have to. It's like steering a big boat with no assisted steering. So you slowly start the roll and just kind of keep holding pressure and letting it roll, but you can't actually like rotate the yoke like hard right.
That's crazy.
You need both hands to turn it.
They're single engine too, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it some Russian radial up front?
EZL, yeah. I think it's a 9-cylinder. It's 1,000 horse radial.
Is it hard to find parts?
No, I don't think so, because a lot of same engine on the drometers.
Oh,
I believe. Yeah.
Oh man, that'd be fun. I got to come down there still.
Yeah.
I've never flown in a Springbank yet.
Oh, really?
Never.
Well, you don't have any planes with transponders, do you?
Yeah, I got one. It's white.
Bring the Kit Fox down.
It's a long flight.
Yeah.
I will see. I might.
How fast does the Kit Fox cruise at? 100 miles an hour? Yeah, it'd be an hour and a half, hour and 3/4.
It wouldn't be too bad. I've been to Sundry a couple times. That's not a hard flight at all. Probably the whole thing at like 500 feet.
That's like 3/4 of the way there.
Oh, I know. Like you can pretty much see Calgary from there.
So did you get the Kit Fox all up and ready to go this weekend?
Oh yeah. So what I did is it had this leaf spring tailwheel spring on it, which is like old school. It's really heavy. It's like automotive technology, and that's how they all came back in like the 90s. So it also came with a bracket. So they basically welded a little plate on the back right underneath the tail post. It's like an 8 thick chromoly, but there's no gusset or anything. So after like 1,500 hours, these plates can crack and your tailwheel can come off. So we welded a thickener on a doubler onto this plate, 3/16 I think we put on, and then replaced it with that T3 from Alaska bush wheels.
Yeah.
And man, I picked that tailwheel up and I dropped it and it looked fake. Like it didn't bounce at all. It just stopped.
Yeah.
Like
so
putting
now
the full gear on. Oh, it's gonna I can see how it'll make you so lazy.
Have you been able to bounce it on yet?
No, I haven't flown it yet with the tailwheel. I just taxied it. I haven't had time. I might tomorrow if the weather's nice, but it's pretty crazy. But it really changed the deck angle too.
Oh, really? Yeah, I guess down a little bit. Lifts it up.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's high now. It looks nice. It's a nice unit, but they're not hard to design or build. Like if you wanted to build your own, it'd be super easy.
Yeah.
I might bring it in. Problem is,
Ryan,
I'll be the slowest guy.
You had
That's what we should do.
Buccaneer out.
Yeah, I took the Buccaneer out. Scott got a bunch of video. I was doing some splash and goes and annoying his neighbors while he was putting the dock in early this weekend. And yeah, finally back on the water. It's actually only in that plane. It's my second solo water landing right out in front of Scott's place there. But never did any solos after I got licensed. And it was nice glassy water, so it was nice and easy on. And I completely screwed up all my takeoffs, but I think I got those sorted out. Emailed my instructor some of the video from the wing, and he goes, "Oh yeah, you got to be more aggressive. You got to pull harder back taking off, and then push it over forward." Okay, I gotcha. So
To get on the step.
Yep. So, float plane.
Man,
Cool.
that thing is so loud.
Yeah,
like it absolutely howls. The entire beach was out filming it. There's fishermen like all over, and they're all filming this thing.
Yeah, when it's dialed up at 2,700 RPM, that the thing is pretty loud, and it sounds different than the other Bucks too, because it's got the turbocharger. So,
you know, what you guys
Brian,
do?
what's the rules or regulations for landing on a lake? Like, is any water game for you, or?
Most water is certain water like national parks you can't do it. So we're all familiar with the Canadian Flight Supplement. There's also another one called the Canadian Water Supplement, and you just kind of read through that one, and it'll tell you certain places where you're not allowed to fly into. Now the reality of that though is that a lot of those places that have registered water aerodromes, they're not really registered water aerodromes. For example, out in Lake Muskoka, I think it's Lake Muskoka, there's like 6 water aerodromes registered, and they're all PPR, but nobody listens to that. They're trying to do that to try and stop the planes from flying. Like, this is our registered aerodrome on this little piece of water. You can't land here unless you register and call ahead. And everyone's just like, suck it. We don't care. So everyone just kind of comes in and lands there, you know, and it's so pretty much anywhere you want.
So
obviously
like,
there's
on that Scotts Lake there, like Pigeon Lake or whatever, as long as you can land and take off or whatever, it's game, you can go. But there's right away to fishermen, obviously, and or like
I think boat rules apply, right?
Yeah, exactly. Boat rules apply. It's pretty much all the same. You don't need a pleasure craft operator license for it, but I have one anyways. I've had one for a while. So pretty much, yeah.
That would, if the CEO's rolled up beside you as you're trolling around and asking for your pleasure craft license.
No, there's at Wadman, there's this point called Falls Point that everybody parks their boats off of. There's a sandbar that goes way out to almost the middle of the lake. And everyone just goes out there and drinks and turns the music up. It's like 3 feet deep, way far out. Yeah. So we should bring Brian's plane up. You guys should fly up with the Easy, Pumpkin, and the Lancer, and then drive out to the cabin when Brian will fly in, and we'll go have some fun.
Yeah. What's the minimum depth of water you can land in?
That's a great question. I'm not entirely sure. The reality is it's not much. It's like 2 or 3 feet. It'll handle it. So it's like a small boat. It
like the distance from pretty much the edge of the door to the bottom of the hull is like maybe 18 inches, maybe 2 feet. Like it's really shallow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The big worry you have to is that the tail does dig in pretty deeply when you're slowing down and speeding up and first accelerating. So that's an extra foot or two that the tail dips down in the back while it's getting onto the step.
Yep.
Man, that day after you made all that noise, a Navajo buzzed me too, like an hour later.
Yeah, and there was another float plane out there at the same time as well, at same altitude, and of course most float planes, nobody talks on the radio ever. They're just like, yeah, no, I'm here, get out of my way. Float plane pilots, I'm one of them now.
It was pretty cool to watch.
Technically, then you can just go do float plane landings and stuff like Nordo because it's not a registered aerodrome. There's no control zone.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's like 3 registered aerodromes in Canada, or not. Registered, so like certified aerodromes in Canada for float planes. One's in, I think Billy Bishop is one. I think the downtown Vancouver is another one. And I can't remember where the other ones are, but they're very, very few and far between where they're actually certified aerodromes. They're all registered in the water supplicant, but of course nobody really. I'll be honest. Most of float plane pilots I've talked to, they're like, "Oh yeah, I've heard of that thing. It's about as far as they've gotten." So it's on 4 flights. So I just press the button. It's there. But
I kind of think Sioux Lookout in Ontario might be on that list, but I can't remember.
Yeah, that might be the one.
Man, that'd be epic flying a float plane out there. That in the Bahamas, I think.
Yes,
the Bahamas. Yeah.
Problem is the plane would get so rusty.
Yeah.
Well, you have to be super careful. Yeah. You have to be careful. So you have to wash the plane off. So what a lot of people do is they'll hose the plane down, but then they'll also get an attachment where they can hook up a hose and just attach it to the bilge plugs. So they'll pop a bilge plug out, drain all the water because there's always water in a float plane, and you screw it in there and then just blast a bunch of water in there and then slosh it around a bit and then let it drain and do that a couple times, and you should get all the salt out. So it is super important to get all the salt off of there, or the thing will corrode. Every plane out there, every float plane out there said, oh yeah, it's never seen salt water. It probably has. They've just been cleaning it.
So that is the plan for this Antonov that I was in. It's going on Amphibs late this year. And the interior is being turned into a camper, like an RV. Nice. So it's like a tiny home. And the owner is going to tour around tropical islands. So this last winter, he was down there with his other plane in the Bahamas, just touring around. So this one they can actually live in and just live on the coast of wherever. So, go all the way around South America. So anywhere you can find a lot of fuel, I guess. The thing idling on the ramp at like whatever, I don't know how many 100 RPM it would have been, a couple 100 RPM, and it was 10 gallons an hour. At idle.
So, man, that's crazy.
So what kind of plane was this Antonov? Antonov
AN2.
AN2.
It's the world's largest biplane.
It's the easiest looking thing ever.
You know what you should try and do is after we're done here and you're editing, edit in a picture for everybody that's watching.
That's exactly what I was gonna do. Yeah.
Actually, I'm gonna walk over. There's two of them here now. Actually, I'll walk over to one and I'll just stand in front of it, and you guys can get the full spectrum. But I think it's a 4-blade prop, but the bottom blade is probably starts at my head. So it would be like several feet off the ground.
That's a big plane.
I think they're cheap too.
Yeah, they are. 30,000 US can get you a flying one.
30,000.
Yeah, less than a Kit Fox.
What?
And
you can take all your friends. 4,000 pounds.
Payload. I think the issue though is they burn a little bit more fuel than the Kit Fox and or oil too.
The friends got to chip in.
Are they wood wings? What is it? Wood wings, steel tube fuselage?
It's aluminum fuselage and fabric covered tail and wings.
Wood wings?
It's pretty cool. It has a leading edge slats. All right. Well, it's right behind me, so you guys see the tail right there. So I'm gonna jump over the fence. Oh, no, that's not gonna work. 1 second.
Tom, is it easy to fly in a springbank?
See, you can see it like.
Oh yeah.
But I can go around and get up close to it.
I want to come see that place.
I've heard a lot of stories of how difficult it is to get into, but then I flew into it last fall, just after I brought my plane back, and I had no problem at all. They were pretty nice and pretty relaxed getting in there.
For the most part, the controllers are pretty cordial. There's a couple of times that they get cranky, but usually that's just from all the students, kind of screwing up and making mistakes. But call ahead. You'll be talking to Calgary anyway, probably. Call Calgary first, and then they'll hand you off to Springbank, and it's pretty straightforward.
All right.
Okay, that's the oil cooler right there. So I guess the bottom blade is at my shoulder. But
you might get one for 30,000, but like, what's that prop cost to overhaul?
Yeah, that's the thing. So you guys can you see that?
Yeah, they're probably like $4,000 a cylinder, too.
Well, there's only 9, so that's a little more than what you pay for. So the cool thing about them is you can't see on this one, but the leading edges have slats which are pressure activated and only for a certain pressure range. So when you're taxiing, they're actually extending out. And they're ran by a blast tube. This one actually doesn't have them. The other one does. But they have a blast tube on the leading edge. And when you have a certain amount of air pressure in that tube, the slats will deploy. So when you're taxiing, they're both coming out at like different times and kind of like going out and in, out and in. But when you're cruising, they're both in. But if you slow down and pull the power off and pull the stick all the way back, the plane will just slowly float down to the ground. So there's no published stall speed for it. So the emergency procedure in like a IFR situation or some situation where you can't see the ground or where you're just going down to the ground without engine power is just pull back.
Man, is it because the tail is too small? Like you can't get enough elevator to stall?
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
Russian bear. I love it.
We got our footholds to climb up onto the tail.
Yeah.
But this is all aluminum. It's got the big door right here. So it's got a little door and a big door so you can put in all your big cargo. The guy that owns these, he will load up his dirt bikes and then go out to the, Red Deer Forestry Strip and then go dirt biking out there or somewhere else. But yeah, they're like, I mean, you look at that plane and you look at a walking, like.
Is that the drain plug cover on the bottom there?
Yeah, so right in here, this cover up here is actually where you drain all the cylinders. This is your probably your oil cooler. Yeah,
He's got a cover that's open underneath there. It looked like.
Yeah, there's just an oil tank in there with the drain on it.
Right.
This one is actually quite a bit different than the other one that he was flying because it's a flying plane, so it's set up. This one they flew in. It came from Iqaluit down to Wisconsin. Then he flew it from Wisconsin to across to Victoria, I think, or something like that, to the East Coast or West Coast, and then just brought it here like a month ago. So, but it's got 3,500 hours. The other one that we were in has 300 hours since new.
That's crazy. Did you say you flew the pumpkin today?
I did. Yep.
All right, man. Mine's still in pieces.
Yeah, I had a angry wife who wanted the plane together so she could go flying. So I got it together.
Good motivation.
Tom, do you miss flying F1s?
Yes and no. I miss the flying part of it. I don't miss the the other aspects.
The maintenance and the money and the
politics and lack of leadership and just bureaucracy.
Yeah. Matt, you guys should fly that thing up here. I'll put mine back together.
Once I get the longies going, we'll do a formation flight up there.
How far away are you now?
So I got all my electrical done. I ended up putting a electric speed brake actuator on it.
Yeah.
And then painting the front half of the cockpit, which was not in the original plan. So that added a week. I have to put the canard on and the bottom cowling on and recalibrate my magnetic compass. And that's about it. So pretty close. Yeah. I load tested everything. So, yeah.
I was telling Brian about the switch failure you had, your circuit breaker switch.
Yeah. I had I want to say Tyco. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Circuit breaker switch, toggle switch. And when I bought it from Aircraft Spruce, and when I was reading the reviews, some people, it's like a 50-50 opinion of them being good and them being bad. And it's got quite a long lever on it, and it is really hard to switch. Like, it's not a smooth toggle. It's almost like it binds a bit. But, and so it's running my electronic ignition, but it actually, the little toggle lever actually broke right off at the base, and it's very small, like I would say it's less than 100 thou diameter and like white metal. So just from the impact of the switch opening and closing a few times, it just cracked and broke right off. The thing is brand new. It has like maybe, I would say 10 cycles on it.
That's crazy.
So I would go with the push-pull one if I were to do it again. I ran my electronic ignition through a push-pull breaker, then to a toggle switch. And a toggle switch that I have is I guess I consider a higher grade. So, yeah.
Yeah, mine's the same, I think. I think I've got a breaker like off the battery, which is the way Klaus from Lightspeed says to do it, and then switch. But you can also run the switch through the mag key, right? Or the key switch. Yeah,
so it's direct from the battery to the breaker, from the breaker to the toggle, and then from the toggle to the actual Lightspeed module. The reason why I did the toggle is so that my switches for my left mag and my electronic ignition are side by side in their own little panel. Just to have everything in one place instead of having a switch over here and then a circuit breaker that you switch over there kind of thing. So,
right.
And they're right on the left-hand side with your throttle and engine controls. So it's kind of a natural hand position if you need to make a quick decision.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
I've got the key switch control on my plane, on my Lancer, but I also pull the circuit breaker when I don't fly, just, to make sure there's no drain on the battery or anything live or any potential for live ignition.
Yeah, that's a good point. The electronic ignition, because I have it directly connected to the battery. If I forget to turn that toggle switch off, I will drain my battery because my ignition is just sitting there on the way. Yeah.
Right.
So, and that actually has happened to a few of the Formula One racers at Reno.
Where they left their electronic ignition on
and could not start the plane. Yeah.
There's actually been a case where someone left their electronic ignition on and the engine started in the hangar.
Ooh. When was this? Was this recent?
I wouldn't say recent, probably 2012 maybe.
Man, that's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially in that hangar, man. That's carnage.
So let's talk about that for a quick second in case anybody doesn't know what we're talking about. So the old school way of powering or of creating ignition sparks for internal combustion engines in airplanes is with magnetos, which is old school tractor technology, which is basically the magneto is just a gear driven device that creates a spark, which then sends the spark up wires to the spark plug. And it always fires at the same time. The modern way of doing it, which is how all cars do it now, is with electronic ignition, which senses the timing of the motor and can control the ignition timing in degrees before top dead center to give you more power and adjust the motor for optimum performance. And so you get better fuel economy, more power, and it runs smoother. And mine at least seems to overpower the magneto side of it. So airplanes have now, or a lot of them have converted, and probably a lot more experimentals, have taken out one magneto, replaced it with a timing device, and installed a automotive style electronic ignition unit, which is basically a box, a control box wired to the timing device and powered, obviously, and which then creates the spark instead.
The benefit of the magneto is it's a standalone system. So if your electrical system fails on the airplane, you still have ignition for the engine. So it's completely separate from your electrical system. But once you put electronic on there, it's tied to your electrical system, but there is ways to isolate it and have redundancy in terms of a backup battery system.
So for people building airplanes, for example, what is the best way to do an ignition system? Is it with this electronic or not? Is it recommended? What are the downfalls? Tom, you want to take that one?
My big advice is, go one electronic and keep one magneto, because, there's pros and cons to both. But if you've got a magneto, and I'm not talking, then we'll divert back to my comment about toilet paper, buying toilet paper. Just because you have a magneto doesn't mean it's good. Make sure it's serviced, make sure it's inspected, make sure it's functional. Have a good magneto and a good electronic. And the likelihood that they're both going to fail on the same flight is, essentially zero. I mean, there's still some likelihood there, but it is so low, you won't have any problems. There's a lot of people doing dual electronics. I'm sure you could design a system where you've got dual batteries, dual redundancy, all that stuff. But I think from my point of view, the performance benefit you're going to gain by doing so isn't worth all of the extra hassle. Not to mention, if you're flying somewhere and let's say one of your electronics breaks, it's a lot harder to get someone to fix it than you're flying somewhere and your magneto goes south. So it's just, to me, it's a no-brainer. One mag, one electronic, best of both worlds. I've had that for a long time and not had any issues at all.
So what do you get? About 80% of the performance gain replacing one magneto with electronic ignition? What's the rule there?
I think it depends on how you fly, right? If you're down at sea level and you're only flying 1,000 feet, there's really going to be no benefit to the magneto or to the electronic ignition over the magneto. If you get up high, 12, 13, 14,000, I think the benefit of one electronic versus two electronics is probably 90%, I think. I don't know. I mean, I've never done it, but I know what the difference is in the electronic made.
The electronic ignition can compensate for altitude. So it is measuring your manifold pressure and will advance based off of that as well. If you have a turbocharged plane, obviously you should have similar manifold pressure all the way up. But for naturally aspirated, like my O235, I'm losing manifold pressure, so the electronic ignition can compensate for that as well.
So, example, I can be at 14,000 feet, lead a peak, and if I shut the electronic ignition off, the engine almost quits. The magneto just can't fire it to keep it running.
Because it's firing out like 30 degrees still instead of that advanced position.
Exactly, yeah. Well, actually, I think in my plane it's at 20 degrees in the 360. Ours doesn't have the ability to ignite this.
So they say the electronic ignition system will fire. Oh, that's cool. Will fire on a what do they call it? A map, I think they say, an ignition map, which is basically at full power, which is like 28 inches manifold pressure or whatever. You'll fire at 30 degrees or whatever the magneto's firing at, right? And then the higher you go, the more advanced the timing will become with the electronic ignition, which can't happen at high power settings because it would cause detonation.
Yeah, so at high power settings, I mean, on takeoff, there's really no difference in RPM drop between my magneto and the electronic. But as you start to climb, and I forget what the number is, I think it's at 25 inches, the electronic begins to advance. And there's some number, I forget what the number is, but I think it's for every inch of manifold pressure, it's 2 degrees or something like this. I can't remember, but once you're at like 15,000 feet, you're at full advance. Again, it's just like we're talking about in our panels. We're taking 1930s tractor technology, literally, and replacing it with, I hate to say it, 1980s technology, that you would install in a Volkswagen or something like this. Like I've got a Volkswagen bus, 1986, and the ignition system on it is still essentially more advanced than what's in my electronic in my airplane today.
Yeah, it's something that bothers me a lot is how outdated these aircraft engines are. And people say, oh, well, so they're more reliable. Well, when was the last time a modern car actually failed on the side of the road? They do hundreds of thousands of miles without any kind of failure.
A prime example of that is, when was the last time you bought a lawnmower that had points in it? Because every airplane that's got magnetos has a set of breaker points, and they're terrible. They especially the slick ones, they constantly need maintenance. They constantly need adjustment. They're just terrible. They're the original case magnetos that were on, little Continentals, which became slick, were the same magnetos that were on tractors. They were case tractor mags.
Tom, what are points?
Points are two little switches. So essentially there's a little cam inside the magneto that has these two little contacts that open and close. And every time the points open, that's when the magneto will fire. But they wear out. They're mechanical parts that move. They fail. There's a condenser or a capacitor in your magneto as well. And the whole point of the capacitor is to make sure that the points, when they open, they don't arc. It tries to keep the voltage across them the same so they don't burn. But your capacitor wears out. Now your points are arcing.
Burning.
The points burn. Then they don't work. So now you need to service them. I mean, it's the same reason why you don't see an automotive repair shop on every corner in a neighborhood, because cars don't have points anymore. They don't need to be adjusted. You don't need a mechanic to do that. So there's no shop. I mean, the magnetos that we have on our airplanes have a 500-hour, I don't want to say it's mandatory, but a 500-hour inspection requirement. 500 hours. It's not that long. I mean, you think about it, if you're flying 8 hours a day, which a lot of airplanes do, that work out in, on Ontario float planes and stuff like that, that's kind of a long season. So every season you got to go through a set of magnetos. The reality is, if you're commercial, yes, it's hard to believe. And if you have
a solid state electronic ignition, doesn't have that.
Nothing at all. No moving parts, nothing to wear. All of our electronic ignitions, I shouldn't say all of them, but for the most part, all of them are distributorless. So they use a waste spark system. So one spark plug fires through the other spark plug. So there's no distributor, there's no coil, there's no points, there's nothing to wear out. it just works or it doesn't. If it fails, the odd time they probably will fail, but it'll be just some component that failed, a transistor, or maybe something got wet, or you had an overvoltage system or an overvoltage event that happened because your starter dicked up the voltage regulator or something like that. There's a lot of things that could happen, but for the most part, they're reliable. Same as, the good point you made. When was the last time you just saw a broken down car with the hood up on the side of the road? It doesn't happen. Well, I shouldn't say it doesn't happen, but very rare, right?
Exactly. And when was the last time you saw a broken down airplane on an airfield? They're there all the time. There's always, you talk to half your friends and half their planes are broken. Like,
you know what?
Actually,
my 1987 Grand Marquis, it actually had an ignition failure, and it was I can't remember what it was, a little module on it, because it had a distributor and everything. There's a
fire, and probably the reason it failed is because on some of the old Fords, it was probably on the side of the distributor. It bolted on and used the aluminum of the distributor as a heat sink. Well, you're supposed to put this white grease in between the two, and if you don't put the white grease there, then the transistor overheats because it can't throw the heat to the aluminum houses. Or somebody hoses with water, or something else. Who knows?
What hangar are you in, Matt?
He's in the one without internet connection.
Yeah, with aluminum cladding.
Yeah, I think he's dropping out of there on us.
Yeah, I think he's out. Anyways, well, what do you think? Should we wrap it up there?
Yeah, I think we talked about a lot today. It was really great talking to you, Tom. So,
yeah, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, it's been a pretty uneventful weekend, so I was glad to be here.
Yeah, it's kind of different too. It's kind of nice to catch up. It's kind of like just calling your buddies.
Yeah. Well, we gotta go fly out to one of those. There was someone posted on the Alberta group there a few weeks ago or a few days ago about there's a new cafe, or one of the I think in Berserker is open there now. And
Tom was there.
So on the news, I saw there was a guy talking about the airport there, and he called it Bicyker. It's Bicyker. That's how you pronounce it. Bicyker. Nothing else. But they got a cute little cafe there. Jen and I were there. What'd you think of it, Jen? Well,
Flying Monkey. They had beer.
Flying Monkey. They had beer. So she had a beer, and we had an appy, and it was just great to get out and be able to order something. She had a beer, but it's a great little place to stop in. It's a little bit northeast of Calgary. You don't have to talk to anybody there, so don't worry about calling ATC. Fly in. The runway's nice. Cool little place to go. We'll definitely go.
Well, maybe we should all congregate there sometime
around here. Well, what else is there out there that's fun to fly into around here? Well, we've got Wolf Lake, which none of you guys can get into. Ram Falls, Red Deer Forestry. What else?
So some other kind of fun places to go if you're looking for just an interesting event. So there's a little ultralight field on the south end of Calgary called Indus. I mean, it's always fun to go in there. It's a fairly short runway, 2,000 feet, or 2,200 anyway, short, but it's grass. It's just nice to see the old guys with their ultralights. I mean, it's kind of fun. You'll have to go there and see what I mean by that. Rocky Mountain House is a fun place to go. There's Ken Fowler there. He's always working on something, and just kind of a neat airport. Lots of aviation going on there. Lots of aerobatics happening there. So if you do fly into Rocky, make sure you join from the west side. The east side of the field is the aerobatic box. So don't fly in there. Where else? I mean, I've flown to basically every airport in Alberta, or just about, probably at some point in time. I like to go to places where there's lots of activity. High River, just south of Calgary, lots of activity there. There's a strong, home builder base there with lots of RVs flying, lots of GA, lots of people out flying, lots of people at the airport, not just people hangar flying. Just get out and go somewhere, find a place and say, I'm going to go to 2 airports today, 3 airports, and then head home. But make the Flying Monkey one, stop there, have lunch, and then head around. If you want cheap gas, Old Didsbury's got cheap gas always. And I think second or third Saturdays of the month, they drop it 25 cents, or I don't know. I missed out on it last time, but I think the last price they had was $1.20 a liter, which, we still think is cheap, but in reality, it's still expensive compared to our neighbors south of the border. But considering what we have been paying for it, it's not a bad price.
I found that strip called Wolf Lake on Google. It's just like this grass strip. So I think I might check that out one of these nights.
But no, Ram Falls is cool. I don't have anything I could go fly in there with right now, but I'll see if I can borrow a Piper or something.
Is it too rough for your Easy or for your Lancer?
Yeah, no chance. I wouldn't bring it in there. The problem is, I mean, the runway, I haven't been there in a while, but it's not overly rough, but you know, you could go there and the grass could be 6 to 8 inches high, which, you know, doesn't seem, you think, oh, that's really high. But when you actually get on the ground and measure the grass, it's normally that long. And it's just, the Lancer is not made for stuff like that. I don't have the prop clearance, and, you know, I wind up going there and wrecking it. Well, why? You know, like, I'd rather drive.
It'd be like taking a Cassett in there.
I'd rather take a Cassett in there than the Lancer. Cassett, at least, you know, with, you got 500s on it. Like, you've got 500s on yours, I think, don't you?
Yep.
Yeah, you'd be fine. Take the wheel pants off, you'd be fine.
That could be fun. I've never flown without wheel pants.
Yeah, it's a little slower and there's a little bit of a pitch trim change, but
yeah,
you'd be fine going there. It's long. I mean, they used to fly DC-3s out of there back in the day.
For what?
Just forestry work and stuff. I don't think the density altitude is usually a factor because it's, you know, it's 5,000 feet or 4,800. I can't remember. Or maybe 4,000. I can't remember. It's not overly high, but typically it's not overly hot when you're in there too. So density altitude is not usually a problem.
All right. I think we've got some work to do, Brian.
Yep. I got to start hitting some of these places up.
I think the Buccaneer would be no problem at all. I mean, that's no issue for that.
Yeah, it's got those nice oleos and the nice prop clearance.
Yeah, you don't have any issues with prop clearance, yeah.
Isn't there a river right there too?
There is, yeah.
Can you land on the river?
No, the river's too small. It's a pretty tiny little river. I mean, it's a river.
There's like a stream.
But it's a little stream. You could land on the river, I think, if the engine quit, but you wouldn't be using your airplane.
Yeah. Not for a while anyways, yeah.
It'd almost be better to land in the river with the wheels down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Well, thanks, Tom.
Cool, guys. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thanks,
Appreciate
guys.
it.
See ya.
Say bye, Jen.
Bye.